Hi, I'm Liz Cully, and welcome back to Cool, Cool, Cool. Each week, I give you a glimpse into what I think is cool and chat with a ton of people that are definitely cool. No topic is off bounds unless, I guess, it's not cool. Welcome to Cool, Cool, Cool. Well, I'm dead because I feel like I've been following you and watching you, and I've had my smoothie this morning, and for so many years, I'm dead. I'm very starstruck at the moment.
Oh gosh.
It's true.
It's funny. I'm really just, I'm support staff. So it's fun to be able to be like on this side of the mic. It's fun to like have the brand and the business. I'm a total accidental influencer, really, truly. Like I just want people to feel in control of the food that they eat, but not be controlling.
Yeah. Well, you started in more traditional, like medicine, or rather healthcare, right? You started working, I think, big brands like J&J.
Yeah.
And what were you doing when you were working there?
Yeah. So I graduated from college with business finance and nature of human health and disease to work in sort of on the business side of healthcare. So my first job out of college was pharmaceutical sales. It's just like love and other drugs. Like they could care less. They're not looking to learn from you. But what was so great about that role, even though it lasted just about a year, was that I learned to read science and scientific papers. I learned to mine PubMed research. I learned to be able to decipher what was statistically significant versus like epidemiology studies, which are basically like, I'm going to send you a paper and you're going to tell me like, I think I eat 2 ounces of red meat a week. No, I don't smoke. Yes, I do smoke. A lot of our nutrition-based studies are really questionnaires, and they're asking people to look back on how they ate over the past year, 2 years, 5 years. And that is just really, it's not best in class. And so a lot of these headlines, the flashy headlines that scare everyone, are based on those type of studies.
For just like people that will opt in, right?
Yeah. You're being asked to opt in. You're being asked questions about how you eat, your lifestyle.
It's wild.
And, where smoking's pretty easy to decipher. You're like, yes, I'm a smoker. It's a cigarette a day. It's 5 cigarettes a day. And how can we correlate that with cancer rates? Okay, great. But when we talk about red meat, are we really teasing out smokers? Are we really understanding their lifestyle? What are their genetics? What's their hormone profile? Where do they live? Like there are so many factors, and it's hard really to clear out the noise and say like, what's really healthy for us? And that's where, the basics of science has really informed my ability to work with clients, which the basics of nutritional science is, what do you need from the food that you eat? You need essential amino acids from protein. You need essential fatty acids from fats. And if you are focused on microbiome research, you're looking for fiber sources to proliferate microbes that live in your gut. So it's simple, in my opinion, and we make it really difficult and overwhelming and stressful.
So overwhelming, so stressful, especially in LA. I think Erewhon, speaking of, we were talking earlier about that Erewhon was really my only source of food during the pandemic, which was actually pretty great in a lot of ways, because I'm born and raised in California. I'm lucky. I grew up, in Marin County, fruits and vegetable. Like I'm lucky.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people aren't. Now Erewhon has become so mainstream and well-known, which is really wild, actually, if you think about it. But it also can be quite trendy and like a lot of misinformation about what, is good for you, what is just advertising, what is, another new product.
Yeah.
So understanding how to read scientific papers seems like such a really overwhelming feat. When did you decide you wanted to further your education and, nutrition and wellness?
Yeah. Well, so I went from pharmaceutical sales into cancer and genetics. And cancer and genetics was, it's gut-wrenching to see someone go through cancer treatment, to understand all of the physicians that are involved in their care. And there are tumor boards where they'll talk about a patient in a case, and they'll talk about radiation, chemotherapy, surgical oncology. And it just, I would escape. I loved my work because I loved talking about the science. I loved the new research. I loved sharing with physicians how they could understand using that information and providing better treatment. But it was gut wrenching, and I would find myself escaping back into the science of nutrition, talking to my friends about nutrition. Ultimately, my best friend, Angela, who I pressured and pushed to go start her own business, flipped the script on me and was like, what are you doing? You talk about all this stuff at parties. You make it seem so easy. You can distill down the information. I feel less overwhelmed. Like, you have a gift and you need to share it. And, I'd met my husband at the time and we were dating. And I thought, this is a great passion project. It's like the convergence of passion, something that I'm passionate about, something that I might be good at, and maybe potentially be able to bring some money in with,
Sure.
I was like, this feels like the trifecta, the perfect trifecta. And so I started Be Well by Kelly as sort of a side hustle. I went back to school for health coaching at first, and ultimately went back to school at UCLA and UC Berkeley for clinical nutrition. And that's a 2-year extended degree, and you sit for an exam. And it's interesting because I would sit in classes at UCLA and it'd be like Nutrition 101, and they'd be talking about plant sterols and margarine to lower cholesterol. And it wasn't the new science that I was reading that was coming out currently in PubMed research. And that was a little frustrating at first, because I'm studying these books, they're basically textbooks at world-renowned universities that were 10 to 12 years behind. And we know that most of the science that comes out, it takes about 19 years before it's in clinical practice with your physicians. And so
across the board.
Yeah. That's what they're looking at on average. And, for the majority of physicians, unless they've gone back to school for functional medicine, know very little about nutrition in general. Like, it is not even a mandated class that they sit and take a whole semester worth of nutrition. And so there's just such a big disconnect in the way that people practice here in the United States. And so where I didn't see the opportunity when I was graduating USC to have a private practice as a dietitian or a nutritionist as being something that was really viable. Fast forward, 8 years after I graduated, and it was like this gaping hole where people needed help.
Yeah.
And I was like, how can I help you?
Yeah.
So I started working with clients on the weekends, at nights, on my lunch breaks. I'd be at Cedars-Sinai with, a radiation oncologist or, a surgical oncologist. And I would walk across the street to the Coffee Bean and take off my scrubs and throw on jeans and a t-shirt and sit down with the client for 90 minutes, throw my scrubs back on in the bathroom, and head back to the cancer center. So it was, looking back, I don't even want to call it difficult. It was like exciting. Like, I really I had so much energy for this passion that it was just spewing out of me. And I just had to help, and I wanted to do it. And I took my, my traditional paycheck and invested in my business. It wasn't something that was a moneymaker at first at all. Like, I wanted to provide recipes, and I wanted to write articles. I would write articles for free for all of the online publications. I'd do interviews with the, magazines. None of that was paid. And to get professional photos and to put up a website. I was investing in my business for a long time. Be Well by Kelly was a side hustle for 3 years before I took it full time. But ultimately, I decided to just, bet on myself. And then I freaked out. I was like, oh my gosh, now I don't have a paycheck. I need to just really get this information out there. And that's when I cold emailed a bunch of literary agents.
Well, first of all, whoa. Second of all, I love that you walk us through how much it takes and how much it costs to invest in your own business. I talk about that a lot on this podcast. A lot of it is fun, celebrity, whatever. I've loved it because it's really, I just talk to my idols and cool people. But I also talk a lot about how much you need to invest in yourself, whether it is a business, a passion project, your family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sometimes you have to sit back and, take a loss somewhere. And by loss, I mean, that could mean financial or otherwise, to invest back into yourself. And so it is a lot like making your websites and taking your pictures and cold emailing people. And, that is a lot of time and energy, and it takes a lot of guts. We found out that we have the same birthday, so maybe that's why. But I need to know what you're like. Do you know all your rising and your moon and all that? You don't?
No, you can help me.
I can help you with that. Oh my God. You just need a lesbian in your life. We'll help you out. Duh.
No, I have it in my email somewhere from a friend.
I can't imagine you somebody's hasn't begged to read your chart before. You know what I mean? Yes. But it takes a lot of guts and it takes a lot of your own investment. I think people can forget that because with the internet, things can go viral or whatever so quickly and they don't realize that there's a lot of work that typically goes behind that, right? Unless you're like posting a meme or whatever it ends up being. Who was your first celebrity client? Because you have had so many celebrity clients, but who was your first?
Eve Hewson, actually, which is Bono's daughter, was technically my first. Mike Alexander was a good friend of mine. He trained Jessica Simpson for Daisy Dukes.
Got it.
If you remember.
Yeah, body, like, bless her heart. Oh my God. Like, I think about that. I'm like, God, that must have been a lot.
She was still with Nick, and Mike and Jess grew up in Texas together, and he came out with her and trained her. And I think when they had the Newlyweds show, he was like on the show. I was a senior at USC. They were really obsessed with USC football and Matt Leinart, and then we were constantly on the sideline. And then it was Matt Leinart's birthday, and Mike and I met, and we were just like laughing. He's really good dude, like down to earth, wholesome, nice guy. And then when I was making the transition or building my business, I reached out to him. You know, he's an expert in the space. He's built a brand by himself. He was a sounding board for me. I asked him questions about like, well, you know, like, how do you start your own business when you're a solo practitioner? Because I didn't have that example other than sort of the big authors and nutritionists who were ahead of me, maybe like a JJ Virgin. I don't know if you remember her work, but there were very few women who had done this. And so he kind of had like the male side of it, but I was like, what do you do? How do you do it? And he's like, well, you know, you just got to get your feet wet and practice. And so he's like, I have a few clients that could use some nutrition help. Come to the gym, sit down with them after their training session and work with them. And I practiced a lot for free. Like I did a lot of free work. I did a lot of favors. I'd show up places. I'd teach people the science. And for me, I mean, there are hacks. There are PDF eat and do not eat lists. There are books you can read and diets you can do.
So many.
I mean, like I've read them all, done them all. Like I'm like Nona now. I'm like your Mimi, your Gigi, your grandma when it comes to food. I'm like, let's just eat the whole foods, honey. Let's balance our blood sugar. Let's pull out the processed stuff. But I really like to empower people with the science. I think we are doing people a disservice when they don't understand the science of blood sugar. And so that's what I would do. I had a PDF, which I think they now call a deck. It was like a PowerPoint presentation where I would go through what are your macronutrients? What do they digest down into? What supports blood sugar balance? What turns to glucose? What doesn't? How can you feel full and calm? What regulates your hunger hormones? What does your body need? And what do you like to eat? Because I'm not going to tell you to eat all these things you don't like to eat and then have 3 days go by where you're following my plan that isn't your plan and it fails. Like, how can we work together so that you're empowered by the science? So that's what I would do. Like I would sit on like one of those squishy gym mats and sit with a client and go through the stuff. And it was awesome. Like it was just awesome to see people have major changes, you know? And then after that, my friend Angela, who I had pressured into starting her own business, which is an event producing business. She does like the Women in Hollywood Awards and the Oscar parties now, which is just like, I have like a proud mom moment where I'm like, yay, so proud of you. But she was helping Honest with their launch of products at Target and throwing this party. And the party was basically a bunch of beauty, home, family influencers at the Lombardi House up in
Wait, that's so weird. I was just at the Lombardi House yesterday for an event. I was like also in a home lifestyle skincare influencery event myself.
There you go. So you would have been one of those guests who came.
Right.
And I basically took a day off of my corporate job, spent money on hair and makeup, got a new outfit. They were putting me in this little furniture vignette. They made me create the menu for the party. So I got to create blood sugar balancing Fab 4 bowls, and everyone got to fill their own bowl with the things that they liked. And it was like protein was here, healthy fats and sauces and dips and whatever were there. all the produce. And so people just built these beautiful bowls with microgreens and the protein of their choice. And then I was sitting in this little chair, like, I'm ready to give mini nutrition sessions and help people with whatever it is that they are having trouble with when it came to diet, lifestyle, sleep, hygiene. Like, I was ready. Nobody sat down. Like, nobody sat down.
They're all just taking pictures with their bowls.
Selfies.
Yeah.
So Ange walks up, the team walks up and they're like, hey, maybe you should just go stand by the food and talk about, the nutrients that people are getting and answer questions about what they're eating and what benefits they'll have. I'm like, great. Okay. So I stand up there and I'm like, ooh, like, the vitamin K and the vitamin D and pointing at all the things on the buffet. And I remember this one influencer, and I don't know who she was, looks up to me and she's like, are you the caterer? I was like, it's all good. Like, I didn't just take a day off of my corporate job to just like sit, and it was fine. Like, you have to put yourself out there and have these sort of embarrassing moments where you question what you're doing and if it's all worth it. And ultimately I sat down in the chair and was eating myself, like taking a little break. And this really cute redhead sits in the chair next to me, Lauren Anderson. And
we love Lauren Anderson. What a sweetie.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so she's like, oh, I just get swelling in my hands. And I always do, I do makeup all day. So of course that would happen. And I was like, like, tell me about your diet or whatever. And she's like, well, I live in LA, so I don't eat gluten or dairy or, all the things. And I was like, nightshades tend to sometimes cause those type of rheumatoid arthritis symptoms. And it may be something that you try. And a couple weeks later, she was like, I feel 10 times better. And I get an email and I go to her house for a follow-up and I work with her one more time. And then like a week later, I get an introduction to Jessica Alba.
There you go.
And so I always tell young entrepreneurs, because I'm a mentor to kind of up and coming nutritionists and health coaches, that it isn't what you think. And there's so much synergy that can happen out in the world when you say yes to yourself and you believe in yourself and you put yourself out there, not for likes, not for being viral, but for actually helping someone and putting the time in to do that. What the world gives you back and the doors that can open for you.
It's always intention, right? I mean, and that's the thing. Even in my own life, I've done things or done shows or whatever, and it's been for the complete wrong intention. And not only does it not feel great at the end, but you really don't get anything out of it, And I love, for me as somebody that, I remember I was like on the wait list for Body Love, old school. I know I like had it. I was like, should I bring this and like have her sign it?
You should have.
5 years old. Okay, well, whatever. I should have. But my wife this morning was like,
I'll send you and your wife.
Okay. She was like, are you so excited? I was like, I'm so excited. As I was making my Fab 5 smoothie, which it was espresso. Also, can I tell you a great.
Is that your 5? Protein, fat, fiber, greens, and espresso.
Oh, yeah. Because it's not the 4. Yeah, the 5. Well, and can I give you a flavor?
Yeah.
Because there's so many combos.
Yeah.
The best 2 ice cream flavors that you can put together, I've been having them since I was a little child, which doesn't make sense because I was about, 4 or 5. Mint chip and coffee.
Okay.
So my suggestion, and I think it follows the Fab 4.
Yeah.
Is make your mint chip smoothie that you have, but then add a couple espresso beans in there. Life-changing, let me tell you.
That sounds really delicious.
Are you allowed to do that? Yes, you are.
Absolutely allowed to do whatever you want.
Okay, so let's get to rules. So as somebody, I remember getting your book, like, oh my God, she looks so happy. Look at her skin glowing. But
what look at your skin.
I know, no, it's all fake. I don't know it's all highlighters, Yeah, punch in there. Are you looking in? It's just glowing.
You are so glowy dewy.
That's all makeup. So what I loved about it is that it was just, again, it was no rules, but a framework. And I think for someone like me, I saw a meme the other day and I had to post it where it was like, you think you can get to me? Like, you think I'm not tough? Like, I was put on Jenny Craig at 12. And I was, and there's so many girls out there, especially, and we're not girls, we're women, because God knows I'm getting mature. But like, remember Slim, like little kids drinking Slim Fast? I was one of them. I think about the awful junk diet food of the 90s.
Olean chips, Snackwell cookies.
All that shit. Oh my God. What about all that horrible, what was the thing where everybody just ate butter? What was that guy? Atkins diet.
Yeah.
Like all that crap. I mean, it was insane. The torture of the 90s. Like, honestly, like I'm spitting out bullets. Like there is no stronger woman out there than someone who had like a really crazy mom that like made them eat Snackwell, like cakes and shit. And Slim Fast and what have you. And I remember getting like a Slim Fast for my lunch. And I'd be like, okay, cool. Like, let me like hawk this back.
Yeah.
Like what's
Get
over?
yourself some like watermelon Sour Patch Kids instead.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what can I get from the vending machine?
I'm like trying to trade for Pogs. I'm like, you know, like, yeah, you want this like fucked up like smoothie, like Ovaltine shake? Like what is happening? But Ovaltine. In all seriousness, it was so rough. And then, you know, especially those of us who, you know, had complete insanity spikes where we went into acting, it was just really tough. And as you mentioned, you know, Lauren, no gluten, no this, no that. There's been so many rules and it's so hard to break. Mm-hmm. And I love that your philosophy is this concept of no rules, but really eating, I think, intuitively and sort of like how we're meant to eat. And you're not calling it, what is it, like the caveman diet, like eat what you can hunt and gather. I'm like, well, I don't want to fucking hunt and gather, actually. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like going to Erewhon is actually hunting and gathering. I'm like throwing elbows, trying to get sea moss and whatever. But I think that can also be tough for someone, like you said, they're like, give me the meal plan, give me the this. And your books are more like, I'm going to teach you how to cook for you, you and your partner, you and your family.
Yeah.
How do you help reframe or get rid of the concept of rules for people that feel so shackled by the rules?
Well, you have to look back at our history, right? Growing up in the 90s, you're in the peak of diet culture. It isn't a lifestyle diet like vegan, vegetarian, paleo, for example, where people feel like that's who they are. We were really growing up in diet culture where someone's doing like a cabbage soup cleanse or Atkins or protein power or, you know, South Beach or something like that, where they literally have an eat and do not eat list. And the reality is when you grow up like that, you don't feel safe around food. So having food rules makes you feel safe. And there's also a belief system there, like, well, grains are bad for you or lectins are bad for you or, you know, and so you have it in your head and you can't eat it without guilt and shame. And so for me, I really found that my healing and what was really helpful to my girlfriends, to my sisters, to the women around me was light structure. And so light structure backed in science is almost like boundaries for an adult without rules. And so the Fab Four goes through what we kind of touched on, which is the physiology of humans. We need to get protein from our food, no matter whether we're raw, vegan, or carnivore. We have to get protein from our food. You have 9 essential amino acids that make things in your body, from your muscle cells to your hormones, neurotransmitters, every like beautiful cell in your body, including your epithelial lining, which is like your gut lining, right? And so we have to get that from our food. And when we talk about healthy fats, we also have to get those essential fatty acids from our food. Those are like your omega-3s, right? They help you fight inflammation, and they're like phenomenal for cognitive development, for a baby in utero to an adult, preserving our brain health, you know? So those 2 things were really easy buckets for me. And then when we talk about fiber and greens, which are the other 2 buckets of the Fab Four, it's like, well, how do we put some produce on our plate? How do we eat some alive food? How do we eat the things that will fill us up and give us those, you know, water soluble vitamins, those phytochemicals, and the fiber that keeps our gut healthy? And so for me, using the Fab Four wasn't telling me I couldn't have a brownie or some rice on my plate or a glass of wine if I wanted one, or, you know, God forbid, a watermelon Sour Patch Kid, you know, without being like, I need to start over. I'm a horrible person. Why can't I follow through? Because the problem is so much of this noise around food and our food choices and our failure to follow through with some arbitrary rule recreated because of some, you know, Instagram post we saw, God forbid, then all of a sudden we can't follow through in our professional career, and we can't follow through in our relationship and show up for our partner, and we can't and then you extrapolate it to all these other aspects of your life and you've crushed your confidence in your ability to follow through for yourself, for what is like your life's purpose, which is to go do some good in this world, fall in love, like have an amazing relationship with the people around you and be present. But we're caught up in our head being like, I can't even enjoy this dinner with my girlfriends because I should have ordered that other thing instead. And we've sort of, if you've grown up in this industry or cared about nutrition and focused on it, it can really get under your skin. And
it can like destroy your being. I mean, I have felt that way. And that's why I talk about it so openly here. And I know there's so much conversation about medications. Like, I'm not here. Everyone can do whatever they want. But like, I've really made it my purpose to be honest about how much diet culture has really robbed me of a lot of time and energy. And that's why I love this idea that you're really giving people their life back in many ways. Because you're like, don't worry about, like, just think or be thoughtful for yourself, as opposed to subscribing to somebody else's rules that if you mess up, you've, destroyed whatever it was. But that can be tough trying to teach people that,
Right. And we start really small. So we have to redefine good. So I might have a client who, for example, will talk through their whole day and I'll look at and find what I think is the biggest driver of their blood sugar dysregulation and their cravings. Like, for example, if they aren't getting enough protein in their diet, I may just say like, I need you to have the Fab 4 smoothie. Like I created that as a tool because I saw even as early as 2011, 2012, women were undereating calorically, undereating amino acids or protein specifically, and not eating breakfast or not starting their day with enough protein. And what happens there is protein regulates the majority of your hunger hormones. It is what your body needs the most. Yeah. And when we're having a hard-boiled egg, that's only 6 grams of protein. That's a problem. Like, your body needs so much more than that. Like, even 10 times that at 60 grams a day, I would say is low.
Really?
So
how many grams of protein do you typically eat a day?
I eat a gram per pound of body mass. I'm pounding 120 to 130 grams of protein a day. Like, I had my Fab 4 smoothie in the car, and that has like 30 to 35 grams of protein in it today. But I had probably a half a pound of grass-fed meatballs when my kids were eating breakfast.
This morning? With the smoothie?
No, I had that first. And then before this podcast, when I was like 20 minutes away, I had my smoothie.
She had a half a pound of meatballs for breakfast, and then it's and you're just, I feel like you're about to be like,
let's go, Liz. But I'll tell you one thing.
3 boys will do it to you, though. I mean, you need some energy.
I am nursing. I am running around with 3 children, 5 and under.
Which is buck wild, by the way. You and my dear, dear friend Nellie both have 3 boys. Her boys, it's 3 under 7. Yours are 3 under 5. Let me tell you, as somebody who's like in the process, I'm supposed to start IVF medication probably my next period. So next week. Yeah, like yesterday, but they like didn't order it. Don't even get me started.
So
I know. Thank you. I was talking to Ronit and Vita this morning. I was like, they're like, what's going on with you? I'm like, who knows? But I was a nanny for many, many years. We've talked about it a million times on this show, but I was a nanny for over 10 years. Before that, I was babysitting infants. I don't know if, I'm sure you were like this since we were born on the same day.
Yeah.
I was like babysitting my second cousins when I was like 10 and they were newborns. I guess people don't do that anymore. I was fine. Like nothing happened. But so I get kids. I love them. If one of your boys was anywhere around here, they would find me. They want to be with me. I'm always like, kid,
you're giving me those maternal vibes.
Yeah. They want to be around. But when I took my wife, who's like never babysat a child, never changed a diaper around, and those boys are pure gold. They are the best little boys on the planet. It is insane to have 3 little boys. It's different than girls. I'll say it right here.
Yeah.
It's nuts. It's like WWE wrestling.
It's takedowns.
Under 5.
It's to your nervous system. You're like, I have like twitches at home. I'm like, oh, that was really loud. Is that someone's face or a toy?
And
hitting
they're
the
like,
wall.
I mean, yeah. So you need a lot of protein. Yeah, you need to pound a half a pound of meatballs at 6 a.m.
Yeah. But I also feel the best that I've ever felt. It was the fastest recovery in postpartum I've ever had. My mood is the most stable it's been in, I don't even know, like a decade.
Because of how much protein you're eating.
I've eaten the Fab Four since like the early 2010s. Like it was blood sugar was my final project thesis in Nature of Human Health and Disease at USC. It was forefront of a course I took at UCLA, Food, Mood, and Behavior. It's like the basis of what has given me food freedom is understanding blood sugar. Because the minute I understood that if I was having a highly processed carbohydrate, my blood sugar would spikes for about 90 minutes. The more processed it is, the faster your blood sugar spikes, the more insulin that's released, the harder the crash, the more cravings, the more irritability. The minute I understood that, I was like, oh, so how can I have my cake and eat it too? How can I keep this balance so that I feel calm and don't have to think about food as often, but feel nourished? And what I've found in this season of life, which is, I would say postnatal depletion happened really hardcore for me after Tashin, my second, because I had my boys. I had Sebastian and I was pregnant. Then I breastfed him for 18 months. I found out I was pregnant with Tashin while I was breastfeeding Sebastian. So I weaned Sebastian at 18 months. Then
so that's
pregnant.
A myth. You can get pregnant while breastfeeding.
Yes, you can.
Actually, I think that's what happened to my mom famously did not know she was pregnant with me until she was like 5.5 months pregnant. Hence, I'm like the shortest sibling. And she was definitely just throwing martinis back the entire time. So
that's why you're so fun.
Here we are. And why I was premature, because I was like, let me out of here. But I think some women think like, oh, if I'm breastfeeding, I can't get pregnant, but you can.
In the beginning, when you're breastfeeding a lot, your prolactin levels are so high that you're not going to be ovulating. As that drops down, then you can ovulate again. And so for some people, they have to completely be done breastfeeding. For me, I have to get to a point where I'm only nursing about once a day.
Got it.
Maybe twice. I didn't get pregnant when I was nursing twice a day, but for both times I had basically dropped to one time. And there are nutrients of concern. Like my iron was really low. I had to do iron infusions. I'm someone who eats red meat 2 to 3 times a week and my iron levels were low. Like you have to understand the nutrient demand of getting pregnant and breastfeeding. You are giving everything away. And so we normalize like hair falling out, dry skin, nails breaking off. And in reality, like this third time around, I finally feel like, let's go round 4. I've got this down. Because
will you go round 4?
No, my husband thinks I'm crazy. I would, but I'm also 40 and I'm like, I have to like love the babies I have and give them all the emotional support that they need. I feel very fragmented in running a business,
and having 3 kids,
being the working parent and the only working parent and having 3 boys. And then nothing replaces mom. So you're lucky you got 2 moms. Like it's like the emotional support that your children will have is good on you.
Let me tell you, my little Chihuahua Ravioli, there's nobody that lives a better life than that dog. Like I've never seen anything like it. I'm like, Jesus. Wow. Yeah. And there's so many myths about what to eat, what not to eat while trying to get pregnant. I mean, I had Roni and Vita here. I'm a weenatal for life. We love it. We can't stop it. But I had a friend who was also trying to get pregnant and she's like, I have this great nutritionist. I always am like, here we go, but also tell me everything.
Yeah.
In Pasadena, like here, I'm just going to give you what he gave to me so you don't have to go spend all the money, whatever. Let me tell you, when I looked at this like plan to get pregnant, I was like, I can't do it. This is like triggering ED up a wazoo. It was essentially it was a complete elimination. For me, what I looked at it as I was like, I will probably lose at least 5 pounds of like water weight and just crap weight, like knowing how many times I've done this. I'm like, but I don't think me trying to stay calm and trying to get pregnant and literally having like bone broth and nothing and a salad. I mean, I've honestly, Kelly, I've never seen anything like that for pregnancy. So it seemed crazy and I didn't do it. When you have any friends or clients that are in the process of wanting to conceive, are there like, what do you typically tell them?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you saw, I had like a visceral reaction to that story just because I just like needed to take a deep breath. Our hormones are so sensitive to caloric changes in our diet. As little as 20% change, like a decrease of by 20% can have an impact on your hormones and halt ovulation. So it is a stressor on the body to have caloric restriction, and stress is not an environment for making and having a healthy baby. So instead of removing things, I like to replace things. And so a diet rich in nutrients would be a diet where you are drinking bone broth, but we're not replacing a meal with bone broth.
Yeah.
We're adding bone broth in as a way to get glycine, which is a collagen amino acid, which you're going to need loads of when you're pregnant, because we want, your ligaments, your tendons, your skin to stretch and be like healthy, right? When I think about a pregnancy diet, it is not one where you are fasting. When it was time for me to get pregnant each time, and when I work with clients to get pregnant, we focus on breakfast. We focus on calming the body through food.
Sure.
And there was a study in PCOS that took women who have polycystic ovarian syndrome, which can impact your body's ability to get pregnant because you're producing cysts. And occasionally these women are a group of women that may benefit from weight loss in increasing their fertility, and balancing their blood sugar is the best way to do that. But all they did was move their eating to earlier, and they ate between 8 and 9 a.m. and 4 or 5 p.m. And they had an improvement in blood sugar balance, an improvement in fertility, and their ability to get pregnant and conceive. And so whenever I have someone trying to get pregnant, we focus on breakfast. We eat nutrient-dense things, which include animal protein. So I, in my second book, have a whole plant-based plan to balance blood sugar with the Fab4. I think in times of pregnancy, trying to get pregnant, have, a really healthy pregnancy where you aren't depleting your body, and then have this reserve stores to nurse a baby without postnatal depletion. I really prefer animal protein.
Sure.
I think red meat is a phenomenal source. It is a multivitamin when it comes to pregnancy. And if you can do a red meat that has organ meats in it, like Force of Nature makes a pound of ground meat that has some ground up liver and heart in it.
I obviously follow you because you post about this all the time, organ meats. And I'm always like, oh, but okay, Kelly.
Yeah. I did desiccated liver for a while before this was an option. At one point when I was living in Brentwood, I chopped up liver, put it in my freezer, and would put it like a little cube in my mouth and take it like a supplement
pill.
Frozen. So that's an option to do it. But the reality is there are amazing prenatals like Wenatal that will give you that foundational nutrition and those minerals that you need and all the vitamins that you need. But the liver is a multivitamin. Wild fish, salmon, shellfish, like shrimp, you have oysters, all of these are going to give you all the minerals that your body needs. And so I really focus on animal foods in this period of time. The pillars of the Fab4 are protein, fat, fiber, and leafy greens, right? The most important being the most nutrient dense. And these are in order on purpose for how they regulate hunger, how they support blood sugar balance, and their nutrient density. So protein, I think people think, a vegetable is going to give them all these vitamins and minerals. But the reality is vegetables are picked. Like let's say we pick broccoli here in California and it's making its way across the states to New York for some restaurant. Hopefully it's not going that far, but most of the time it's traveling for at least a week. We know that the vitamin C content in broccoli when it travels after it's cut for 7 days is 0. So plants respirate. They basically break themselves down and use up the nutrient stores in their little plant, I want to call it a body, in that plant itself to stay quote unquote alive, right? And so where animal proteins are delivering those fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, they're delivering minerals and they're delivering really bioavailable forms of B vitamins. That is so critical for pregnancy and for a healthy pregnancy.
Well, great. Thank you. I need to know. Because I also had a visceral reaction when I saw that plan. And it also broke my heart because I just was, again, as somebody who's just been a slave to the diet culture, and I know this person has been too, I'm like, girl, no, like this is crazy. Like I'm looking at this. And at the end of the day, I was like, I think you should just like not eat like crazy processed food. Like
it's just real food.
Make your own food. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I mean, my wife always complains like when we go out, she's like, I'm so swollen. I'm like, yeah, because we have no idea how much it tastes good because there's so much salt in that food, you know, and nobody feels that great. I mean, it's also like age, right? We wake up in the morning. I'm like, I can't get my rings on. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh boy. I'm like, how sad is this that this is where we've gone? You know, but I think there's so much misinformation out there, but there is all of this, you know, do this to get pregnant, don't do this. And I mean, I have just every month, every week, I learn something new about what it is to get pregnant and what it is to not get pregnant. Stress is the biggest one, which LOL, I'm always stressed all the time, which is horrific. But I think you know, when you think about if you have been impacted by food, thinking about getting pregnant, it's like, oh my God, well, in some ways you're like, well, I should just like lose weight before I get pregnant. And really it's be, you know, thoughtful about your food before. Yeah. And then you can't eat sushi. So I'm like, do I just go crazy ham at the sushi bar? I don't know.
I mean, there are pregnant women who eat sushi, and you have to make that decision for yourself, whether some of the foods that are quote unquote off limits here in the United States that aren't off limits around the world are, you know, every time you eat, there is a chance of a foodborne illness. And that's why those foods are taken off of.
That's right. It's more like it's bad to get food poisoning while you're pregnant, right?
That's what they're worried about is listeria, basically like a foodborne illness that could potentially cause a miscarriage. And so a majority of foodborne illnesses here in the United States that have been reported in the last like 5 to 10 years are like pre-cut fruit, like the cantaloupe pre-cut in the little like clamshell container, spinach, peanut butter, there's romaine. It's like we get caught up in it being just lunch meats and sushi. But the reality is like, I think you need to trust your gut. And that's the whole process of becoming a mom too, is these pings of intuition where you go like, does this feel right or does this feel wrong? And you just hone that skill of tuning in and listening. And you're going to feel good with most of the choices that you make. And then you make a mistake and you learn from it and you go, okay, that's not in alignment anymore. And I need to like overcorrect here and remember this experience so that I do better next time.
Yeah. Do you feel like with sort of diet culture as it relates to Hollywood now, I mean, people are doing tons of different methods, whether it's medication or, you know, plastic surgery or whatever it is. It feels like we're in a weird time in all reality. It feels like we've taken a few steps back. Do you think generally speaking though, people want to eat well? Like, do you see like that? You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm articulating it right. Because I don't want to be judgy in it. I think it's just, you know, I work so closely to fashion and Hollywood and I'm like, I feel like we were like kind of progressing in this way. And now we're sort of taking a few steps back. Like I'm worried that there will be some snack well.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think there are these blips in history where they feel very extreme. Like in 2011, 2012, the juice craze was like going crazy. Like the fresh juices.
By the way, sorry to cut you off, because as somebody who had a Jack LaLanne juicer.
Yeah.
And I was juicing really early 2000s. And I look back on that and how unhealthy, and talk about blood sugar spikes. Like what a dumb thing to do. I was just juicing nonstop and I would just be so foggy and crazy. I did read an article a long time. You did a celery juice sort of, you know, you did it for a week. I'm totally paraphrasing, but I remember it was a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah.
And you were seeing if there were any benefits with celery juice because so many people just claim that celery juice is amazing. But what I gleaned from your week-long celery juice adventure was you're like, yeah, I mean, I felt good because like it's water and I'm like drinking all of this water.
It's electrolyte water.
Yeah,
essentially. It's essentially, yeah. I mean, I am a caffeine lover, and I have to pump the brakes when it comes to coffee because I love the taste. I love the smell. Like I have memories of going to the mall with my parents and my mom being like, we're going to go shop. And my dad going to this coffee shop where the windows were all coffee beans and walking in and getting that like waft in my face of coffee when I was like 6 or 7. And then my dad would like kiss me and he would smell like coffee. I don't know. I have like all these very special food. And I think we need to acknowledge food memories too as like a part of what, like our cravings, and that when we feel like I intuitively want to eat something, it's like there's a real story to be told there about like the joy or the love that came around a table or a moment when food was involved, and
Sure.
you can't discredit those. I love caffeine, and I have a problem with going downstairs and turning my coffee maker on or like starting the espresso and being like, yay!
Yeah,
like,
same.
I'm so happy about this. And I wasn't always starting my day with water. And so that celery juice thing for a week was like, okay, every day you have to start your day with 16 or 20 ounces of celery juice. And I'm like, okay, I was simply just hydrating at the most important time of the day with a bunch of like structured water. It was electrolyte water that came with some antioxidants, and there's not a bunch of anti-nutrients in celery. It's literally like hydrating. And so I think those things come up and we're like, oh, we got to jump on that. But if we can take a step back and say, well, why is that working? What's the science behind that? Like I can do that with the carnivore diet that's very popular right now, where people are just eating red meat and they're having, maybe egg yolks, maybe some honey, maybe some berries if they're like kind of not core carnivore.
How do they go to the bathroom?
Well, your body does a great job. I mean, there's like,
they're not getting constipated. It's hard to bring up bowel movements.
No, a lot of times it will actually go the other way when you simplify your diet like that. But I look at that and I go, oh, here's what's happening, Liz. They're having so much protein that they're so full and regulated. They have big breaks of time between meals, allowing for full and proper digestion. They're salting that food. They're getting, enough chloride to create hydrochloric acid in their stomach to break that food down. They're probably sleeping really well. They're getting the most bioavailable forms of all of their nutrients. So they're feeling really good. They don't have these spikes and crashes. If they're going carnivore, they're probably laying off the booze. They're probably pretty serious about sleep and movement, and well, voila, of course, right? But do we have to go carnivore to have those feelings? Like, no. And so you kind of, anytime something like this becomes really popular, I take a minute and I'll try it. I'll see if, what my clients think about it. I'll look at the science instead of going like, this is my answer. Because I think when we don't trust our gut or we don't really look at something under a microscope to understand the science of it, we can feel a little lost and we can be really easily convinced that like that's the next best thing.
Totally.
And so when we look at Hollywood and diet culture, we had, that juice cleanse, that craze that really, I think was maybe 2007, 2008, really popular. People were juicing for like a week at a time. And that is really detrimental to blood sugar. So all it is, any vegetable, even if it's an all green juice, any vegetable going through the juicer, what you're being left with is glucose water. It's basically, because a vegetable is a carbohydrate and you juice the fiber, away from it, you're basically freeing. So a cellular carbohydrate would be eating, let's say, a cucumber. The glucose is wrapped up in the fiber cell. When you juice it, you're obliterating the fiber cell, making that glucose really easily absorbed. So you drink it, it goes right into your stomach. It's absorbed immediately into your bloodstream, and you're doing a lot of it. So your blood sugar spikes really, really fast. Your pancreas overreacts, sending out a bunch of insulin. Insulin is putting that sugar away, glucose away in your liver and your muscle cells. Your blood sugar is crashing. And then what do you want? Another juice. And you're waiting for that mark where you can have like your strawberry almond milk. And then you get another green juice. And then it's a cacao almond milk or walnut milk, or a hazelnut milk. And you're like, you're up and down all day long, but you're at a caloric deficit. So you're probably shedding some weight and you're like white knuckling it till the end of the week. Well, the problem is if you've lost some muscle mass because you've had no amino acids that whole week, your muscles are getting smaller. And then you go back to eating normal, and the space where you would store the sugar you normally eat or the glucose you normally eat is now smaller. And so then you gain weight on the back end. And that is the perpetual like cycle of yo-yo dieting is this loss of muscle mass and then returning to eating the way you normally did and then gaining weight and then wanting to go on another yo-yo diet and having these extremes. And so thankfully, like the juice thing is over. And I did see people moving more towards, let's say nutrient dense eating. They really were tied to like a lifestyle diet. You'll see people be like, oh, I'm paleo or I'm vegetarian. There's this like binary divide of like where they feel what they're called to, how they're called to eat. They're based in whole foods and they're based in nutrient dense foods and they're based in traditional eating. And so I'm like, let's do this. But when you have something like Ozempic be all over the headlines, it will get at people's root insecurities.
That's what I think is the thing I'm seeing, right? Is it's like even Heather Gay, who's a friend of mine, she's a Salt Lake housewife. She just went on and she's been brutally attacked for her weight, but also like celebrated for being normal, whatever it might be. And she's like, I gave up and went on Ozempic. And like, what's wrong if everyone's Busy Phillips was just talking about like, well, whatever. And not to say that she was going to take it, but she was like, it gives you that feeling like, all right, well, if everybody else is doing it and like, why is it okay for women to do it, but not men? And they were doing testosterone to get big. And like, now we're being shamed for doing it's a lot. It's a bummer, but you cannot be on Ozempic trying to get pregnant. That's like a no-go zone, as I am aware. And there's so many other implications that people don't think about, but I think you're right. The main thing that it gets to is that like little terrible voice inside of you that's like, it will never get fixed,
Yeah, like that you're not good enough voice. And it's like, it's also really hard too, because for me, I've worked with functional MDs for now 12 years. And when a functional MD first gets a patient, we do all their labs. So we're doing all your like metabolic labs, all your, cardiovascular labs. We may be doing cortisol and hormones and food allergy testing, stool testing, urine testing. Like you're a lab rat, right? So we do all of your labs. And then if there is someone on, hypertension medication for blood pressure, or they're on something like metformin for blood sugar balance, our goals were always to remove all pharmaceuticals or to work with them to eat a whole food diet, to build lean muscle mass, to work on sleep hygiene, to talk about stress. And a functional MD will go through their labs with them. But then when they want that hand holding of like, well, now what do I do? How do I eat? What do you mean blood sugar balance? I can do this with food. I get the pass off, I'm like catching the ball in the end zone. Like, let's get them this touchdown. And I sit down with that patient and we go through their pantry and we talk about the foods they eat and the cravings they have and like their day in the life. I'm like, put me in your body. You wake up in the morning to an alarm or by yourself. Like, what are you eating? What are you drinking? Where's your stress levels? And I really try to embody them and then find the easiest changes that could have the biggest impact, all for the goal of within 6 weeks, I want them off their hypertension medication. I want them off their blood sugar medication. And so it's funny, Ozempic's having this really big moment, but a lot of Hollywood's elite have been on metformin for 6 to 8 years.
No, I know. I mean, that's the other thing is
like
where
the pill version is like not as popular, but all of a sudden this shot. And I think it's because the shot is such a high dose. It does come with really big side effects. There's a lot of functional MDs now microdosing.
Yeah, I saw that.
Types of, the semaglutide and things like that. So that's interesting. But I don't want to say it's bad or it's good, because the reality is if I have a client who has, they have major insulin resistance, they have really stubborn weight that when we go super caloric deficit or we just focus on blood sugar balance, they have a really hard time making any body composition changes. And we do want to get their numbers in a better place. We want a better triglyceride number. We want a better cardiovascular ratio. We want, we're looking for specific things on their blood markers, and we can do this for a short period of time, pull some weight off, decrease inflammation, C-reactive protein goes down, interleukin 6 goes down, homocysteine goes down. And then all of a sudden, they're in a place where they do want to be more active. They don't have the hunger cravings that they used to have because their insulin sensitivity has gone up and their leptin sensitivity has gone up because they've lost some of this inflammatory, let's say it like fat cells that would potentially give off cytokines, which increase sort of this inflammatory storm. it can be beneficial. So I'm in this like very hard place where
I think a lot of people are trying to figure it out.
80% of the time we're really working to pull people off. And then occasionally we'll have these cases where that works. And then all of a sudden, I think the goal is like never to be on these things long-term when we don't really have any long-term data on it.
Well, right. Yeah. It's the data. Oof. I went to not to like really shift gears, but have not talked about this yet.
Yeah.
But I went to a hypnotherapist on Monday.
That's probably, this is the stuff I love. Like,
I know.
I want a Reiki. I want a hypnotherapist.
Oh, by the way, I don't know if it's you or your twin on Monday, but I'm having a psychic come here. So get ready. A friend of mine has been working with a very well-known celebrity hypnotherapist named Carrie Gaynor, anti-smoking.
Yeah.
And Shaq, I don't know what he does. I know he worked in rap music, which is how we are friends. But he's like the guy who plays like poker with Leonardo DiCaprio and like he's like Molly's Game. I'm like, Shaq, I don't know what you're up to, but like, sure, I'll meet you at 12 o'clock on a Monday in Santa Monica because that's just the kind of girl I am.
Yeah.
So I show up. I'm like, what are we doing? He's like, well, we're addressing food. Like he wants to do this hypnotherapy program for food. I'm like, oh my God, I had eating disorders my whole life. Let's do this, right? I'm like, let's do this. So I have never been, I'm married to a therapist. I'm in therapy, or actually not presently, but whatever. But I've been in therapy for many years. I'm into all of this kind of stuff. Like, tell me my tarot, let's do this. So I sit down. First of all, the whole vibe was crazy. I'm like in this guy's house by the beach in Santa Monica. He's this older gentleman, kind of quirky. I'm like, fuck. We sit down. I'm like trying to get him to like me, and he's giving me kind of nothing. I'm looking around. It's like pictures of Charlize Theron and Matthew Perry and Leonardo DiCaprio and like all these celebrities. I'm like, fuck. And then all these random paintings of like the ocean or like a jungle.
Okay.
I'm just giving you what happened. So I'm
there with you right now.
And he's like, tell me about a food day for you.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I had a Fab 4 smoothie this morning. Then I waited a couple of hours, and then I was like, then I had like half of a California Chicken Cafe Caesar wrap. I know it's not great, but they're so good.
I used to love that place.
It's the best, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then I waited like a million hours, and then I ate like salmon. And then I unfortunately ended the day with espresso chocolate chunk ice cream and 2 glasses of wine. And now I feel like shit. So here I am, Carrie, work your magic. Guess what he hypnotized? First of all, have you ever been hypnotized?
My senior night, like grad night in high school.
But did they make you go like out? Because
No.
I didn't go out. Yeah, you don't really. I was under the impression that you're like out. But no, you're like awake. You're listening. You're just deep relaxation.
Yeah.
But what do you think he told me in that? Are you so curious?
I'm dying. Tell me.
This dude told me to eat 3 meals a day.
Mm-hmm.
That were primarily vegetables and protein. And if I wanted a little bit of rice or quinoa, to drink a glass of water when I was done with my 4 to 6 ounces of protein, push the plate away and say, I'm done. And in my mind, I'm on the program and I'm working the program. And I will tell you, it is so weird because in my mind, I'll be like, I'm on the program and I'm working the program. No sweets after dinner. Don't need them. Just drink tea and water.
Okay.
And like be free of food jail.
Yeah.
That's what he told me. That's it.
And did it work?
I have not had any ice cream this week. And I love ice cream, and I'm PMSing. No wine. I'm on the program. I'm working the program. But how weird. Like I was sitting there being like, what is this guy going to tell me? And he literally was basically like, don't be an asshole. Eat like regular food and like have, and then, oh, sorry. The other main thing is and I'm like hearing in my mind, he's like, and if you have a slip up, it's okay because that's life. And you wake up the next day and you're on the program and you're working the program. So I don't know. I don't know if my whole life just got changed. Who knows? But it's basically what you've been saying to me for the 6+ years I've been following you on the internet.
Yeah.
Do you die?
I mean, I'm thankful for him.
No,
give me his number. I'm going to give him an applause. That is that. I mean, I can't tell you. It's just refreshing to hear that he wasn't like, here's a protein bar that I want you to eat for every single meal. And this is your replacement, like futuristic cube of food that will be Soylent or something. Like that's what it is. I mean, like that's how simple it is. And I think we really overcomplicate it, and we don't need to overcomplicate it. And when you focus on proteins and produce, and you're going to have those healthy fats and like sauces and like the yummy factor there, and you're full, you're calm. And I think what's so interesting is his mention that you're just going to push the plate away and be like, you're done. Like and you can do it. You're on the program. You're working the program.
Die?
No,
like what?
Because I mean, there are a reason why placebo studies, the placebo group has benefit. And it's this internal belief that like, maybe this like lack of confidence or belief in yourself that you can like actually follow through with the program eats away at you to the point where you self-sabotage. When in reality, if you had this ever knowing belief that you are beautiful, full of abundance, and, you know, baby making queen who has no problems with food and weren't given that label at a young age, then you'd be able to say, I'm on the program, working the program.
Well, amen to that. But I'm on the Be Well by Kelly program because I have been for so long. But I just was like, oh my God, this is kismet that I'm seeing Kelly this week, because I'm like, he basically was just like, yeah, eat a Fab 4 life and you're good to go. Kelly, I can't thank you enough for driving all this way. Being here.
It's good to be back in my stomping grounds.
Oh, good.
It's like the energy of LA. I'm like normally like beaching around with the babies and working remotely, but it's always fun to come back up. You know, I'm going to hit up Erewhon on the way home.
There you go.
Here's my lunch, and then it's baseball.
Well, you have a baseball team at your home. So there you go.